Hi everyone, and welcome back to your Life of Christ class here at MDI. This video begins the fourth week of our study together. I've chosen this one parable to study because of all of the parables that Jesus told. This one has been the most confusing to me personally over the years. There are numerous attempts to explain it, and those attempts can be confusing to say the least. I'm not going to claim to be able to give you the insight into this parable that all others have missed. Now, that would be arrogant, but I am going to explore it with you, so let's go. It's contained in Luke, the 16th chapter, beginning with the first verse. It is accurate that in both the 15th and the 16th chapters of Luke, Jesus is lecturing the Pharisees on a number of issues. In Luke 15, Jesus is told a series of 3 parables which culminates with the telling of the parable of the prodigal son. Jesus likens the Pharisees to the eldest son who pouts whenever the prodigal has repented and returned home. He contrasts this with the reaction in heaven whenever that which was lost is found and restored, as in the lost sheep and the lost coin. The fact that Jesus is not speaking to us about the nature of the kingdom is evident by the absence of a certain phrase regarding the kingdom. Whenever Jesus is teaching in parable about the kingdom, he will usually say, the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he'll follow with the parable. There's none of that here. Although the first verse states that he is now speaking to the disciples, and the Pharisees are a secondary audience to this story that is being told. When Jesus completes the parable, we are looking at it as it says that the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, ridiculed or they scoffed at him in the 16th chapter and 14th verse. Recall back to our lesson on teaching in parables and the genius of that approach. Here it is not simply the telling of a story to educate, it is the use of a story to rebuke and correct. Remember that when King David had his affair with the wife of Uriah the Hittite, Bathsheba, after all of his cover-up plans had failed and he had arranged for the death of Uriah in battle, he thought it was over. Until one day, that is, the prophet Nathan came calling. He told the story of a man who had a single possession, a lamb, and it was the only thing that he possessed of any real value to him. But a very wealthy man who could buy and possess anything he wanted set his sights on that lamb when a traveler came by. Unwilling to take from his own flock to feed the traveler, he took the man's lamb and killed it to give it to the traveler for food. Now, when David expressed his righteous indignation over the situation and said the man deserves to die and will be required to restore fourfold to the man wronged, Nathan famously said, "You are the man." He then suffers a stern rebuke at the hands of the prophet, including a "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel." Therefore, Nathan might have gotten this very effective approach from the very one we are hearing tell this story in Luke 16. You can find the story I just cited in 2 Samuel chapter 12. The parable itself here in Luke 16 involves a man who is a manager of the affairs and estate of a rich man. Charges come of mismanagement of a serious enough nature that he's told his services are no longer required. Apparently, the manager is in a limbo state physically, age-wise, and maybe otherwise, and finds himself in a predicament with his unemployment imminent. Foster explains in your reading the special nature of the aorist tense used to describe the moment the light bulb goes off and he determines what he will do at that point. He calls those who owe the rich man and settle their bills for 50 and 80% of the total. And the rich man commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, according to Jesus. Now, the unresolved question in my mind is, did Jesus call him the unrighteous steward because of the charge for which he was originally fired, or because of the action he took for which he was commended? Or did one lead to the other? Did he take the action he did because he was unrighteous? I think the key to understanding and answering these questions are found in the reaction to the steward by the rich man. He was fired because of his unrighteousness, but commended for his action. Apparently, the loss of 50 measures of oil and 20 measures of wheat was not, in the overall business dealings of the rich man, considered theft. Rich men deal in gains and losses all the time. I personally know a man who lost $24,000 in the stock market on September 11, 2001. It was a paper loss and did not affect his day-to-day activity and lifestyle. He eventually gained it all back. Now, perhaps that's what we're dealing with here. Now, Jesus makes some concluding remarks to direct us on how to think about this parable. Perhaps we can find some direction from him on how to think about this story. His very first comment outside the story may very well explain why some people have a great deal of difficulty understanding it. Jesus says, "For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light." Let me give you an example. I remember several years ago being impressed by a radio station in Springfield, Illinois. It's a classic rock station that I would listen to occasionally. One year I heard at Christmas time that they were assisting families in need. They would call people up and inform them that they were going to receive cash or gifts or something that would help with their Christmas. I remember thinking when I heard about this for the first time, wow, that ought to be the jurisdiction of the church. Now, that radio station has used money to help people while at the same time increasing their listenership. And this continues on to this day. I just heard it recently. Have you heard about the rich man referred to as Secret Santa? Every year he gives away $250,000 in $100 bills. He operates in Kansas City, Missouri, and has joined forces with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. They assist him in his annual effort. His benevolence is well advertised, and he has used his money to gain friends all over that city. What do you think the reaction would be if it made national headlines that Secret Santa had gone bankrupt and lost his fortune or his home to foreclosure? I think there'd be a long line of people who would chip in to help because he met their need at a critical time. I have no idea if Secret Santa is a Christian or not. It doesn't matter for the sake of our discussion. It's enough to know that he is following this principle. I saw just this past Christmas a church somewhere, and I don't remember where, do something similar. They established the need of several individuals and joined forces with the local police department. The officer would pull the targeted individual over and engage them in a discussion about Christmas and Christmas presents. The officer would wear a radio with a keyed mic where the pastor, his wife, and maybe some others waited at a local Walmart to purchase whatever the person said would make their Christmas a good one. And before the traffic stop could end, a car rolled up with the pastor and his wife and the gifts inside, and they would give them away to the targeted individual. Perhaps you've seen on the internet where a church in Ohio has taken to ordering pizzas and giving the delivery man or woman a ridiculous tip. In one case, that still appears occasionally on Facebook. A young man who was tipped $1,000 was inspired by the generosity of that church to change his life and get off drugs. The story reached a rehabilitation center in California who contacted the young man and offered to bring him to their facility and rehabilitate him at no charge. The point Jesus makes is that the sons of light are usually behind on this kind of thing. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm omnipresent and have knowledge of everything going on, but in this world where the church is more eager to point out sin than to reach out, is preventing it from achieving its charter, and that's a shame. Why my personal experience is that I saw a classic rock station do Christian things for business reasons long before I saw the church catching on, causes me to ponder the truth of this parable. As the church moves through this world, it must be okay to get a little dirty associating with and making friends outside of the church as we fulfill the commission of the King. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you'll find ways to use your money to reach out to others in the name of Christ, and we'll see you here next time.